Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where we dive deep into our faith on this incredible journey of balancing a life dedicated to healing, nurturing, and giving back. I'm Johanna, your host, and each time we meet, we'll explore the stories of remarkable individuals who are PAs, doctors, and professionals, and mission-driven changemakers, from the halls of our hospitals to the hearts of our homes, and into the communities we serve. Join us as we uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between through the lens of our shared faith in Christ. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a parent, or someone passionate about making a difference for God's glory, this podcast is for you. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready to be inspired by real-life stories of resilience, compassion, and dedication, all rooted in faith. Hi, friends. I'm so excited for today. Today we have a special guest, Tracy Bingaman. She is a clinician career coach, guiding healthcare providers to boost earnings, sustainable careers, and feel a work-life harmony. She's a busy mom, hosts her own podcast called The PA Is In, and started a business called The Money PA. She is just full of insight and wisdom, and so I am excited that she's here on the podcast and here to share a whole wealth of information. Thank you so much, Tracy, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's start off and, tell me a little bit about your journey and your work as a PA to the moment you started your businesses, because you seem to have a couple of different ones going, but what was the pivotal moment in making the decision and how did all that start?
Yeah, so I am 12 years into my career as a surgery PA. I have worked in general surgery, I have worked in robotic urology, and now I practice part-time in plastic surgery. And along the way, I had an experience where I got super burned out, where I was professionally drained, where I was personally not showing up in a way that was meaningful and like I wanted to. And during that time, my healthcare system was booming. We kept buying new hospitals. There was more and more demand for our inpatient team, and we just didn't support that with human resources. And despite me raising my hand and saying, hey, I don't think this is sustainable, I don't think this is safe for patients or reasonable for providers, the response I was getting was, keep up the good work. You're doing such a great job holding down all of the things that need to be done. Mm-hmm. And at that time when my surgeons kind of said to me, hey, if it's not broken, they're not going to fix it. Mm-hmm. And we're doing so good to keep up with the demand because that's what our patients needed, because that's how we show up in healthcare, mm-hmm. that no one saw a problem. Mm-hmm. I felt a problem. I knew it wasn't sustainable, the rate at which I was working. I was working 60 hours a week and I didn't work weekends, which was salaried 12-hour days, accidentally volunteering to the tune of 20 hours a week where I wasn't home with my family. And I had this one day where I worked 12 hours in the OR, where I was on call overnight, up all night. And in the morning, one of my kids wanted me to hold her. But I was on the phone and I was balancing my laptop on my lap and I was so exhausted and sleep deprived. And I had all of these patients that needed me. And she came out to the living room and said, Mama up. She wanted to sit in my lap and snuggle. She had just woken up. And I said, honey, no, I can't hold you right now. And because she has 4 older brothers and because she was a toddler who didn't like to hear the word no, she looked me right in the eye and said, Mama, you're stupid. Oh. And I was so startled and so heartbroken. And I felt like, wow, there was so much truth in that toddler sassing me.
Yeah.
That she was right. It was so stupid for me to be giving the best of myself, my best energy, my best focus, my best compassion at work. And that it was leaving me with nothing left for my family. And at the time, I would have told you that my family mattered more to me than anything else. But if you actually looked at my schedule and my energy and my focus, that was untrue. That was not true. So I had this huge aha moment and a big old meltdown. And my husband said, hey, I think you need to resign today. And I said, I don't have time to quit today. I have too many patients to see. I have too many notes to do. I have too many phone calls to make. And I didn't want to quit in a way that was just a reflex to, a bad day and a bad night and, just exhaustion. So we talked about it and really thought about it. And we waited a week and I resigned 1 week later. And during that time, I was looking for resources for burned out healthcare workers. And I just wasn't finding anything that was about being a PA. I wasn't finding anything that was like, hey, you're burned out. What are some small shifts you can make? What are some big changes you can make? And so I decided to create some of those resources that I couldn't find myself when I was going through burnout. So I resigned and I published my first podcast episode in the same month. And that was coming up on 4 years ago now. Wow.
That's amazing. But such a story that resonates with so many people. I feel like, that was me also and my husband. We were also in that same kind of moment of like, you need to decide, what you want to do, like, work or stay at home or, choose something else. And, thankfully a different opportunity came into our lap too. But, choosing work over family, that's like something that every day we face that challenge. And, how do we juggle balancing that motherhood and work and avoid the choice where we're choosing work over motherhood? And how did you end up like juggling that in the end? Like, I know you had to like force yourself out of that overwork situation, but after that, how did things go?
So I resigned from my primary position and I had at the time had a 1099 contractor position with what is now my current employer. So I had this established working relationship. So when I resigned, that was one of the first phone calls I made was to my current surgeon. I just said, hey, remember when we talked about me maybe leaving this position? I resigned. And he said, whoa, we weren't ready for you to do that. And I said, well, I did. Not so much because I wanted you to be ready to hire me, but more so because I needed to get out for my own sanity and health and for the, saving my relationship with my family. But ultimately, that turned into a full-time position that I started like 6 weeks later, which was really miraculous because I was already licensed and credentialed. I already had some of the things in place that would have slowed that process down. So I ended up starting there full-time, and I was there full-time for about 2 years and then back down to part-time after that. So now I work clinically 24 hours a week, so I have 24 hours of patient contact. 3 days a week. I have 4-day weekends all the time, which sounds so posh, but really is a lot of me recording and editing and sending emails and doing lots of business things on those other 2 work days. Yeah. But I don't think that this idea of balance exists. It makes me think of this teeter-totter that's perfectly positioned. So work is on one half and your life is on the other half. And everything is exactly how it should be. But the reality is that we're constantly growing and changing, and the demands of our family and our self-care and our work are always in flux. So this idea that like static 50-50, I think when we say work-life balance, we're giving work way too much value. Yeah. And that we're saying like, hey, it's either work or it's life. My ideal is to have an integrated life where I work some because providing for our family is important and having something that you're passionate about is important, but that work fits into my life. Whereas before, when I was super burned out, I felt like my work schedule dictated everything. And I was trying to live in these tiny, tiny windows of time in between work and sleep because we need to rest also. Yeah. And that has sort of flipped on its head for me in that, if that's not a priority and it's less of one than it's ever been before in my life, working clinically when I'm on, I absolutely need to be on. When I'm off, there's some boundaries in place so I'm not on and thinking about work, that is a total 180 from what it looked like before.
I love that though. And that's like so key because Yeah, we have to contribute to our family, and we have to, have a job of some kind. And, because whether you have your own business or you're doing your own idea, that's still a job too. And it's just kind of dividing the time and prioritizing, giving intentional time to one or the other at different times, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so was it the burnout that came first, or the idea to start something for yourself?
I would say I was certainly burned out before I had this idea to start serving other people and hosting a podcast and serving the world in the way that I show up now on a weekly basis. But also, I think when I was so burned out, I was grappling for anything that would make me feel connected and passionate and purposeful again, because I felt all of those things for clinical medicine when I first got out of school. When I first started, I felt connected to my patients. I felt like I was making a difference. I felt passionate. I probably felt a little overwhelmed as a new grad, but I didn't feel overworked or taken advantage of, or like the system had just like chewed me up and spit me out. So when I got to that point of burnout, I think I was looking for anything that would make me feel less of a shell, less of like I had just lost sight of who I was and what I cared about and how I wanted to contribute to the world. And the podcast was a way that I could do that on my own terms. And honestly, I did it in a super unhealthy way. Like when I was first burned out, I would get up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I had insomnia. Like I wasn't getting up to do some like magical morning routine. I couldn't sleep and my mind was racing and I couldn't stop thinking about work. So I thought like, well, I'm awake anyway. What am I going to do for the next several hours until my alarm would go off? And I sort of snuck out of my bedroom and started working on this idea of like, what if I talked to the person who had insomnia? Like, what if I talked to the person who was burned out in medicine and feeling so dispassionate and like the light had gone out, and how could they rekindle that? What if I talked them through my experience and said, hey, I don't exactly know how to do this either, but this is what I'm trying. This is the experiment I did. This is the book I read. This is the thing that I tried. And I almost didn't do it because I felt like I wasn't an expert on recovering from burnout. Because people are like, pick your lane, decide your niche, like choose what you're going to be an expert in. And I'm like, I've done this for 4 years and I'm still not exactly sure how you need to recover from your burnout. I can tell you some ideas and you can try them. Like there's no one true path to healing from burnout. That's for sure.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your business and what you do. I'd love to, hear about it. I'm sure the listeners want to know more about the PA is in and the Money PA.
Yeah, so the PA is in is the podcast. So if you are a consumer of podcasts, we talk about all things working in medicine, passion and purpose and boundaries and finances and time and energy and all of these things that sort of combine to describe what it's like to live your life while serving others and while working in medicine. And then I offer coaching. So whether that's coaching to get through a career transition or to help you recover from burnout, if you're feeling so disenchanted with the healthcare system and thinking, hey, I'm 5 or 10 years in, I've got a lot of, career left in the, before me. How do I navigate this without totally sacrificing myself? I offer one-on-one coaching for that. And in the last couple of years, I've started to do some negotiation coaching where I just realized that particularly PAs and APPs are undervalued across the country by healthcare systems and small organizations where they're either misunderstood for the value that they're providing, or we're so happy to be here that we're accepting job offers and not aggressively negotiating contracts like our physician colleagues. And I think we're overdue for a change in that regard. So I've started helping clinicians to really understand their worth and negotiate in a way that's meaningful and not like we feel like we're taking the screws to our employers, but rather that we're standing up for ourselves and saying, hey, I deserve to earn what I'm worth. And here's what I'm worth. And here's, how I'd like to be compensated for that contribution that I'm making. Because money doesn't solve all the problems, but having more money creates more choices in your life, and you have more margin, and you can sometimes work less when you negotiate better. And all of those things matter in the big picture.
That's so true. And even like knowing our worth as PAs and APPs, it's, what would be something that you would, how would you help people understand their worth as a PA practically?
Yeah. So when you look at the worth and the value that you're providing to a practice, there's two things to look at. The first is your actual tangible value. So in terms of billing, RVUs, money generated, charges dropped, those are things that you can objectively track. Sometimes they'll give you a report at the end of the month that says, here are your RVUs. Takes some finagling to turn those into actual dollars, but there is some conversions on the internet to figure out what number of dollars is attributed to those RVUs. And then there's also the intangible value, which is where a lot of APPs contribute heavily, and why sometimes it doesn't look like we're making as much money for the practice as some of our physician colleagues. And that's doing things like the call schedule, returning phone calls, reviewing results, anything that you're doing that's non-revenue generating, but needs a higher level of clinical evaluation, where the physician certainly could do it, but you taking it off their plate means that they can see a 99204 or scope a knee or do other things that are generating revenue. That also adds incredible value to that practice, because they are exponentially more productive and more profitable because you are doing that thing, so they don't have to.
That's so true. And then you had mentioned negotiating, and how do we learn those negotiating skills? Is it something we can learn, or just something that we just kind of have to be coached in as well?
I think like all things, you can learn it on your own. I think that there's so many resources for these types of things. If you are someone who's like, I don't want to be coached, I want to DIY, we do have a course available called the Clinician Income Lab that helps you to figure out what you're looking for and how to ask for that. And let me tell you, negotiation is happening all around us. Like we think of negotiation like capital N, I'm getting a new job, I got a job offer, contract negotiation. But negotiations are happening at work every time someone asks you to do something, every time they ask to put another same-day patient on your schedule, when someone's out and they ask you to stay late or cover call, when your kid is like, can I have a fudge bar and watch a movie? Like all of these things. When your partner says like, where should we go out to dinner? Right? All of those conversations are negotiations. And even more so, like when you're talking to a patient and you're trying to get them to co-create a treatment plan with you, that's a negotiation, like getting them to buy into this medication and compliance and imaging and follow-up and lifestyle modifications. That whole conversation is a negotiation where you don't actually dictate the outcome because they are the ones choosing their behavior and their compliance, but there's certain things that you can say to help them buy in to the fact that they will be healthier, that they will feel better if they're doing some of these things. So negotiation is just like anything else. It's a clinical skill. We don't learn it in school because we just don't have time. So they're just like, go out. We don't learn about the business of healthcare. We don't learn how to stand up for ourselves. We don't learn how to have some of these negotiation conversations. And that makes us nervous. But the people I'm talking to, like I'll get on a phone call with someone and they'll say, I'm just so nervous about talking to my physician about this or my practice manager about this. And I'll say like, tell me about the hardest patient you saw this week. And they're like, oh, I told Mrs. Smith, who I've been seeing for 25 years, that she has incurable lung cancer. If you can have that conversation, you can have this conversation. We are so good at communicating with people. It just makes us nervous to do it on our own behalf. And we don't have the specific strategic tools to do it.
Yeah. And sometimes we're just scared of the no. But we can't. The worst thing anyone can say is no, but then you can always negotiate or, find another way to try again, right?
Yeah. No is a great thing to come to because it's either no, not right now, no to the way that you asked, or sometimes it's a firm no, and then you have more information, right? you thought, oh, I've been here for 17 years. We love each other. This is such a good mutual relationship. And you ask them for something and they say hard no, and you try again and again and they say no. And then you realize, okay, now I know. Now I can go forward with this information that they don't actually value me as much as I think that they should. Either I'm going to make some other request or I'm going to make some plans to make a change. And either way, that's information that you want to have going forward.
Exactly. And speaking of change, like, how it's hard, even when you hear that no, and then you realize where you are currently is undervaluing you, but you still are scared to make those changes. Like, what are some ways we, can take those and initiate those changes? What helped you make those changes in your life? Like, because, you still had to make the decision to quit within a week of having that bad day. But, what was that in your mind that said, I'm going to make this change? And how do you help others make those changes?
Yeah. So, every day we're making so many choices. It gets really overwhelming when we feel like, oh, we have to make a grand sweeping gesture, right? If we're negotiating and someone says no, and we say like, okay, fine, I'm not going to XYZ if they're not going to pay me more. That is amazing and great. And, you should build that boundary and stop taking extra call or stop volunteering or stop being overburdened, stop accepting that you're the only one who is capable or willing to do some of those things. But saying it isn't enough. So you have to have a plan for implementation, because if you say, I'm not going to chart at home anymore, right? I asked them to pay me hourly for all of this extra admin that I'm doing, and they said no. And then I asked them to, support me in this way, and they said no. And then you're like, well, fine, I'm just not going to chart at home. Well, if you leave the office every day with 15 unsigned charts, what's your plan, right? Like, because you'll say, I'm never charting again at home. That's enough. I've had enough. But that in and of itself is not enough for you to actually stop charting at home. So what am I going to do? I'm going to, block an hour before I leave. I'm going to chart over lunch. I'm going to accept that I'm going to make a little less money and take a little less pay, but I'm going to refuse to see this many extra patients. I'm going to make sure that I say, hey, in order for me to see these patients safely and to get their charting done, I, need this chart time blocked. I need admin time blocked. I need the ability to answer my, in basket with 48 hours instead of 24 hours. Whatever it is that you need to do to accommodate that. The step that we get wrong when we try to implement change is we just usually, when we're pissed off, honestly, we say like, never again, right? I'm never again doing this. But we don't actually think what needs to be true for that to be able to be a sustainable change that I'm making. I need to have conversations. I need to sit down with the office manager. I need to tell the front desk to stop putting same-day patients on my schedule when I'm already full. You need to tell those patients they need to see someone else, or they can see me tomorrow in the same day spot that I have available tomorrow morning. And it takes so much more for you to implement change in the office than it does in your personal life. In your personal life, usually we have to have less of those conversations, but making these grand declarations without an implementation plan is just setting ourselves up to be mad when the next day we bring our laptop home and crack it open after our kids are in bed because we're charting because we didn't actually change anything.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. It's like just figuring it out to, implement something. You have to have a plan in order to make the change. And how did you end up finding any, or as you said earlier, there's no such thing as balancing. It's always giving something intentional and, timely, or a time block to everything you do. But how did you balance life as a clinician and everything that you have now, like with the extra businesses that you're having now? And, practically, how do you work out everything?
This is a work in progress every day over here. I made a rule recently that I'm not going to check something I'm not planning to do something about, which keeps me out of my inbox a lot. Like I used to spend a lot of time like just on my phone checking emails, and then I would see one and then I would get stressed out about it, and then I would want to read it, but I would know that I wasn't going to deal with it at the time. So I just made a rule, like if you're not ready to address emails, get out of your inbox. Like don't hang out in places where your temptations exist. I think it's much harder for me to create boundaries with business than it is for me to create boundaries at work. Because now I have a position where I get my notes done. I don't have call. So work sort of belongs in a work box, and it's easier for me to keep work in the work box.
Yeah.
Business is something I'm excited about. It's something I can do for my phone. It's something I can do for my laptop at home.
Right.
So I try to create boundaries. Like I don't do work outside my office, and I leave my laptop in my office. Sometimes I'll pull it out to like order groceries or something. Like I'm not so rigid about it.
Right.
But that physical barrier is super helpful to me because if I open it to do something, then I'm like, oh, let's look at the podcast downloads. Let's check the email. Let's see what's on LinkedIn. An hour's gone and I didn't really do anything productive. So I think it's harder for me to build boundaries around business than it is around work. But I try to, I don't know. I'm not doing it perfectly over here either.
It's so hard to do. It's, perfection never is, right?
Sure.
And so, but it's interesting though, because you have had time to train for triathlons. Is that correct?
That is true. Yes.
How does that work? And how did you even get into triathlons?
So I have been doing triathlons for years and years, and then I took a 10-year break. So I did triathlons as a grad student and as a new grad PA. And then I got married, and then I had 3 back-to-back babies, which some women, bless them, train and compete when they are pregnant or postpartum. I did not. And then I just had felt this hunger to kind of get back into it recently. Like, again, maybe this is a character flaw. I'm like, what's next? Like, I'm constantly looking for this next challenge, this next goal, this next thing that I can set my sights on. And to be completely honest, last summer, I really struggled with, I call it reverse seasonal affective disorder, because I love the winter and I have this hobby that I do in the winter where I ski, and I just, it's so great. I would spend 24 hours a day skiing if possible.
That's
But
awesome.
I live in a part of the country where I can only ski for 2.5, 3 months because our winter is just not super robust. And as winter faded into spring, into summer, I was like mourning the loss of my sport. And I just had a terrible summer and I was just really struggling. And so this year I had been working with a coach who was like, hey, you really were struggling last summer. What are we going to do about that? And I was like, well, I think we're just going to be depressed until winter comes around. And she was like, well, what could we do differently? And I was like, well, I could train for a triathlon. I could pick up tri training in the spring when the snow melts. It will give me something that keeps me active. It will give me a specific goal. It will have me working towards something. So just a few weeks ago, I competed in my first ever Olympic distance triathlon after a 10-year break with one of my 9-year-old son there cheering me on. And I was actually pregnant with him when I did my triathlon last before that. So he was like, remember when we did this triathlon together? And I was like, I do. So a little bit of a full circle moment there, but it's such a fun sport to do multi-sport. It's so challenging to do multi-sport, and the community is like second to none. The people doing those sports, you'll see all kinds, all different body types, people that are 18, people that are 80, and everything in between. It's a really, really cool community. And it's been really a blessing to me and helped me to feel less depressed this summer.
But I kind of love that, you had done triathlons before, but you were finding a solution, getting, another idea, a new idea, and you had like someone to help you kind of push you towards choosing to get involved in something productive versus just kind of sitting around and waiting for the next winter to come along. And that's like important in life too, just to kind of remind ourselves that we just don't have to wait until what we want to come around. We can, find something else that may be beneficial for us in that period of time or season in life, right?
Yeah. And I think when it comes to the professional realm, we wait too long. We're too reactive. We're in a position where we feel kind of comfortable. And so we're not thinking, what's my strategy? What's my exit strategy? What's next? How can I challenge myself? How can I move? How can I? And then we end up behind. We start to feel like we've outgrown the position, like we're not happy with the hours, but we didn't start to say, hey, what if I did this specialty, but in the office instead? What if I did this, but I was the weekend rounder? What if I did this, but this? We sort of are caught on our heels instead of thinking proactively about what's next career-wise.
Yeah, we're not making those implementation plans. Yeah, either we're stuck in comfort zones or we're, as you said, too reactive and we just do something rash, but we don't have those plans, those implementation steps that you were talking about earlier. And so I think that's so valuable from this, conversation is like the implementation plans and how we can get those things in place before we do the rash thing and in order to leave our comfort zones, right?
Yeah. And the more specific your plan for implementation is, the more likely you are to succeed. So getting super clear on I will exercise Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning before my kids wake up. And even better than that, I will lift on Monday and Friday. I will run on Wednesday. The more specific you get, the more likely you are to do that thing. If you write it down and if you tell someone else and say hey, can you text me and ask me if I'm doing, did I work out this morning? You're more likely to do that than if you just in your mind say okay, it's a new week. I'm going to be a totally different person. Well, you're probably going to be the same person. But if you want to be a different person, what are you going to do specifically differently this week that wasn't the same as last week?
Exactly. Yeah. And, speaking as the money PA, how would you encourage others in finances, business, or in motherhood in general?
My best encouragement for you financially is that there may come a time where you have to make a choice between bringing in money and taking care of yourself or taking care of someone in your family. And for me, that happened when I got burned out. And when my husband said you should quit, we had already run the numbers on what it would look like if I was working not at all for 6 months and not bringing in any income, or what it would look like if I dropped to part-time. So we had run all these different scenarios from a budget standpoint. And we had spent the 10 years before that preparing for some unknown emergency. I did not think it was going to be me burning out, but there we were. And when he said you need to quit, I wasn't at all worried about how we would pay our bills, sustain our lifestyle. Sure, we made adjustments, but that I knew we could walk away from one of our two incomes without being strapped or panicked or it causing a negative outcome on our family or our life. And that truly financial margin saved my life. I was in a terrible place mentally. I was unwell physically, and I could not sustain the pace of continuing to work at that place in that specific situation. So having that financial margin makes it so you can just make that decision based on what's best for you and what's best for your family. And that to me has been just the margin is so worthwhile because money can't buy happiness, but it does give you choices, and choices make people happy. So if you have financial margin, you do have that ability to choose what's best for you and your family. And that is priceless, truly.
For sure. Yeah. And there's probably a lot to delve into in just that topic alone, because there's so many things in regards to financial planning, but that's something that is key, and that's something that, is important, because we may not be able to work forever and we don't want to.
No one is able to work forever, right? Yeah, no one is physically able to work forever. And if you don't want to, you have to start planning now for the time when you can walk away. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So how can we avoid burnout?
I think it's nearly impossible to work in medicine without having some degree of burnout. But what I have realized is that if you're looking at a spectrum and burnout is on one side, the other side is sustainability. Mm-hmm. So burnout happens when you're going through your resources faster than you can regenerate them, when you don't have the energy to keep up with pace, when you're so exhausted, when you don't feel personally connected to your patients, when you feel like you're not getting anywhere, like you're just a hamster in a wheel. Career sustainability is when you feel like I could do this all day, right? Mm-hmm. This is a sustainable pace. Mm-hmm. This is a reasonable demand, which I know to some of you listening who are in clinic, who you're seeing like 47 patients a day, you're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I just feel like I could do, I don't feel like I could do this for one more minute. Right. Well, you're at the burnout end. Mm-hmm. But the opposite of burnout is to have sustainability, where you can keep doing what you're doing or make the necessary changes to get to a point where you can keep doing what you're doing. And that is sustainability, whatever that looks like in your life, is the opposite of burnout. So figuring out what you need in order to maintain your energy, in order to protect your time, in order to make sure you have enough money to walk away if necessary, those things guard against burnout. But we also work in medicine, which is unreasonable in terms of demands and stress and life and death decisions. Like, there's a reason that it's hard. It's because we're doing very, very serious things with very, very serious consequences. Yeah. I don't think anyone gets out completely unscathed. Like, no one works in clinical medicine for 50 years and says, like, it was every day was just rainbows and butterflies. Like, that's not reasonable. Yeah. But it was sustainable, and I wasn't sacrificing my health and sanity. That's what we need to move towards in medicine. And that starts at an organizational level, but it just also starts with each person saying, no.
Yeah, exactly. No. Yeah. Because in medicine, you can totally be taken advantage of if you are a yes man.
Medicine attracts people who want to take care of other people. Exactly. So we have a disproportionate amount of people who feel called to pour out ourselves into others, which is a setup for burnout because of who this attracts.
Yeah, that's so true. Because, every one of us goes into it to want to help people, to want to be like, yes, I can do that, But I have learned myself too, the value of no, just having to be like, I'm not going to do it. I just can't, for my own sanity, for my family. And I just can't. And, I had to be like, if I'm not on call, weekends are off. I am not, participating, because otherwise if, you give into one thing and then it'll be another, and it'll just take over your entire life, because that's just how medicine is. Yeah. Especially
and it's so
different
much
specialties.
Harder to build those boundaries when you've been so available and so responsive and so willing to volunteer that it's harder to build them afterwards. Like, oh, by the way, I'm not always going to be available. Than to have built those boundaries on the front end and make rare exceptions.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough, but it has to be done. And you have to take those breaks. You have to, step away physically, mentally. You have to take the time. Otherwise, it'll just consume you and your families, because the level of stress in medicine can be so high. As you said, given the seriousness and severity of what you see in medicine too, and what you have to deal with sometimes. So definitely, you just have to take the time and set up those boundaries from the get-go. And if you can't, you need to figure something else out. So what are some other words of advice, encouragement you can give to those listening and others trying to find that, elusive balance in work and life?
Yeah, I think if I could go back and tell my pre-burnout self anything, it would be to listen to my body more closely, which sounds so woo-woo. I know. But I feel like when I was burning out, my body was saying kind of quietly, gently, we can't keep going like this. This doesn't feel okay. This doesn't feel safe. This is not sustainable. And I ignored it. And then it said, hey, we can't keep going like this. This is not safe. This is not sustainable. I'm going to give you pneumonia, right? I'm going to see if I can slow you down in this other way to get your attention. Yeah. And when the pneumonia is not enough, I'm going to give you refractory tachycardia and profound autoimmune hyperthyroidism, right? And those things definitely got my attention. Mm-hmm. But that if I had listened sooner, I would have seen those warning signs. I would have seen the yellow flags before we got to the red flag. And that also what looks like sustainability in your life, what looks like a good, solid work-life integration is going to be completely different from other people. You cannot look around at lives around you and just copy-paste into your life. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
You can see some inspiration from other people and be like, wow, she's getting her kids off the bus and that really matters to me. So that's something that I want to be able to implement in my life. But you can't say my neighbor's an accountant and she works from home all the time. I want that. Well, okay. But that it's unique to you and that it does take some figuring out. And the bad news is that once you get it figured out, one of your kids goes to kindergarten and then it looks totally different. But that's also the good news, because if you're in a season where it feels like it's just not ever going to get better, like life changes all the time anyway. So it's a moving target and there are whispers and there are shouts, and that in this life, it's hard to quiet down long enough to hear your own body warn you and also to figure out what your ideal life looks like so that you can start to implement some of those things. You can start to make some changes to walk towards that better life that you are dreaming of and that you are wishing that yours was.
Yeah. And so thank you so much, Tracy, for spending the time having this conversation. And I hope that the listeners were able to gain some valuable information regarding burnout, negotiation, and just trying to find out how to implement the plans to better facilitate their lives with work and family. Thank you so much. And I hope that everyone can find that hope in the burnout, and that they can figure out how to spark hope, figure out how to, share that and shine that light in their families, in their communities, and get out of that burnout, the difficulties, and find the hope despite it all. And thank you so much for listening. I am so glad that you were able to join us today. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us, leave a review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram and all the socials. We'd love for you to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, Whether you're balancing the demands of a medical career, navigating the joys and challenges of parenthood, or dedicating yourself to a cause greater than yourself, you're not alone. We're here to support you, celebrate, and inspire one another on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep sparking hope. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions.